I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And we are going to. So, good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you here today with the Center for Global Education. My name is Sarah. My name is Sarah Flynn, and I'm the program director here at the Center for Global Education. And we bring together kids all around the world, students who are studying. And today we have Brazil here, we have Canada, we have the United States. I think we'll even have some kids maybe from Turkey who might be joining us in a little bit. And we bring youth from all over the world to talk about things that matter most to us, whether that's sustainability and climate change, whether that's refugees, if that there's a whole bunch of different reasons why we bring students together to talk. And I'm just, as we go through, I'm going to do a friendly little reminder before we get started about making sure that we're muted, because we have over 44 people here today. So let's keep our microphones muted so that we can hear our wonderful speakers who are joining us from ECO Canada. And then we have a student who's been participating in the Conference of Parties conferences, the UNFCCC, who has been doing work in environmental climate action. And Campbell's gonna join us as well. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear from them both. And so let's keep our microphones muted until it's time for us to talk and ask questions. And don't worry, there will be time. So I want to start today by acknowledging that I'm joining you from Treaty 6 land. Now in Canada, we're going through a process called reconciliation. Now I don't know if anyone wants to sort of wave their hands to say that they know what that means. But in Canada, before the colonizers or settlers came, there were many people who lived on this land. And I think over the years, they know that we've been going through a process of reconciling the pain and the hurt and the violence that came from that process, that came from people who were here on the land who were mistreated. And so as we come to understand that as citizens and as governments and as a culture, we are engaging in something called land acknowledgements. So I am acknowledging that I join you from a land that's called Treaty 6 land. So it was an agreement that was made between the peoples who lived here before, the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota, Sioux, and the Dene, and the First Nations and other Métis people who populated this land and walked this earth before they arrived. So I want to acknowledge that and welcome you all today in a process that sort of mirrors the gatherings that used to happen on this land before us. I want to acknowledge too that we have some wonderful speakers joining us. Jeannie is joining us from ECO Canada, which is a Canadian organization that helps adults and students across the country think about sustainability in their careers and provides training and internships. And you know what? She's going to explain her organization much better than I can explain it, but I want to welcome her as well. And then to Campbell Blockson. And he is a student right now in university who's been doing work with the Center for Global Education for many years, but is an activist and an advocate and really interested in sustainability. And he's going to talk about how he juggles those two interests with pursuing a career, but thinking towards sustainability as a life choice and how you integrate that into your own futures. Because I know many of you, whether you be in junior high or high school, are thinking about the future. And I already see some questions here on the chats like, how did you decide? How did you choose a green career? When did you make that choice? What can I do, to get there? So I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to talk about it today. Now, the format for today is going to be our speaker is going to do a little talking, and then she might have a question. And if you have an answer or if you have an idea, you can use the raise the hand feature in that participant list. There's some actions that you can do. So you can raise a hand, you can clap, you can give a thumbs up if you like something. You can also use the chat feature. Now, if you're joining us online through the live stream, we're live streaming right now to YouTube. You can ask your questions there as well in the chat. Mike, helper for the day on the internet, and he's live streaming and he's reading all of the comments that you leave there, and he's relaying us back to us here in this meeting here. So even if you're online, even if you're on YouTube and you're not part of the Zoom meeting, you're welcome to ask a question. We will get it to our speakers. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to invite Jeannie now to introduce herself and tell us a bit about ECO Canada. Oh, you're a bit muted there. Let's see if we can
Yeah,
get you.
there we go.
There you go. Perfect.
I'm not as technologically savvy as all of these youngsters here. So, well, thank you, Sarah, and I'm so pleased to be here and to have the opportunity to talk with all of these wonderful, bright young students. My organization is called Eco Canada, and basically, we're the steward of the environmental workforce in Canada. What that means is that we design programs and training opportunities to support people who want to work in environmental fields. So we provide training in a broad range of skills that are required by environmental employers. We also provide wage funding in Canada for those who are just starting their careers, if they're a student getting their first job, or if they're a young person breaking into the industry for the first time. We also provide events. Before this current pandemic, we had frequent networking events where people could gather together, all different types of environmental workers, to chat about what they were doing and what was going on in their world, to network and to catch up and to learn more from their colleagues. And my job is to find out, to do research, to find out how many environmental workers there are in Canada, what types of environmental work they're doing, where they learned the skills that they needed in order to be successful as environmental workers, what types of skills they need in order to be successful as environmental workers, and to forecast what the workforce might look like going into the future. So I've got a big job, and it's an exciting job, especially with all of the wonderful changes that are taking place in terms of environmental activity. Uh, to start out with, I understand that a lot of you are interested in potentially pursuing a career in the environmental field. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about how environmental workers are classified, how we think about environmental work. So there are two types of environmental workers that we talk about. We talk about people who are working for companies or organizations that are focused on providing goods or services that are environmental themselves. So people who work for advocacy groups, people who work for solar panel manufacturers, people who work for architect firms that are designing green buildings, people who work for oil and environmental consulting firms, regardless of what their skill set is. So in that case, we're talking about environmental workers who maybe don't work directly towards environmental sustainability themselves, but they're supporting an organization that does. So they could be a receptionist, they could be an accountant, they could be a custodial services individual. Those people are considered environmental workers because they are supporting the environmental goods and services sector.
Believe in yourself, right, Jeannie? Because you have a PhD in economics.
That's correct. Yes.
And here you
Yeah.
are working. So, I mean, you yourself have blended that sustainable green career with something that maybe some people wouldn't think is inherently a green career, economics.
Absolutely. In fact, I think the common perception is that economics and environment don't go well at all together.
Maybe in Alberta for sure.
The truth is that economists are studying the benefits of taking action and the costs of taking action. And what an economist can do, what we can contribute to this discussion, is the idea that the actions that we take, the actions to buy a car and to drive a car versus taking public transportation, the actions not to recycle versus recycling, those actions have costs and benefits to us. The benefit to us of having a car is the convenience of having a car versus taking public transportation. The costs, however, include the traffic that's created when we add another car to the world. It's the pollution that can come out, the emissions from that car, the costs of manufacturing the car and the gasoline that goes into it. So an economist wants to look at both the private costs and benefits to the individual, as well as the social costs and benefits. And that's where I think the economists can help when they're interested, when they're recognizing that. Um, to talk a little bit more about environmental work, we also look at workers who have special skills. They're well trained in a particular environmental specialization. So we could be talking about a lawyer who is a specialist in environmental legislation. We could be talking about a health and safety expert who's a specialist in terms of pollution abatement. We could be talking about an engineer who's designing a sustainable or net zero energy building. All of those individuals may not work for environmental companies. They could work for companies all across the economy, but they have specialized skills that help them to protect and conserve and sustain the environment. And that's a big part of their role.
And so what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that even if you don't have to necessarily go into environmental studies or say forestry to be an environmental champion in your future role, that you can be economist, you can be, well, I guess engineer is very associated, but you could be an architect, you could be a teacher, and still integrate it into a sustainable model.
Absolutely. There are more and more opportunities these days for individuals who are specialists in various different scientific fields, engineering or engineering technology, education and research fields. So if you don't want to necessarily work for a business, but you'd prefer to be an educator or a researcher, there are lots of opportunities for people doing that sort of work.
Mhm.
You don't have to narrow your focus in order to join the environmental workforce. In fact, we're looking for a wide range of skills.
And our someone from Taiwan actually has an interesting comment about this in the chat. She was saying that really so many of the environmental jobs we don't even know they exist yet. And so maybe it's best to pursue something that you're passionate about, and then keeping in mind your desire to be a sustainable worker, and those fields might still come. Like how do you see an Eco Canada negotiating the jobs we haven't even thought of yet?
That's right. It's a real challenge in order to try to capture what's going on. Um, a lot of the newer jobs that we've been learning about are more jobs that deal with facilitation and organization and management uh, than the technical jobs. So there are lots of opportunities. If you are a techie, if you like big data, that's great. If you like working with technology, if you like chemistry or physics, great, go for it, because those are excellent avenues to get into the environmental workforce. Uh, but it's also the case that individuals, for example, suppose we want to build a large commercial office building, and we want to design it so that it is as energy efficient as possible. In fact, we want to make it a net zero energy building, so it's
Do
not
it.
going to have any impact in terms of energy use outside of what it can produce itself. Well, in order to do that, we need to bring together all of the people who are involved in building a commercial building, and we need to get them to brainstorm in order to find the best ways to design and develop and to construct the building to make it a net zero energy building. So we need architects, we need project managers, we need designers, we need interior designers, we need landscape architects, we need engineers, we need technicians, we need construction people, we need regulatory investigators. All of these people are coming together to work as a team. And that's really the transition that we're seeing is rather than having individuals working in their own silos, they're working together in order to brainstorm, to solve the problems that are facing them and to come up with the innovative solutions. So teamwork is one of the key elements to a successful environmental worker going forward.
And I mean, as an Eco Canada, you do kind of have to have guidelines on what you define as sustainable. So there, I saw that there was someone here. I think it was from New York. Had a question like, how do you even then put that box around saying this is a sustainable career, or this is a sustainable placement? Like, is there a defining feature to something that you would say is an example of a sustainable career? Does that make sense?
Yes, no, I do. It makes perfect sense. Mostly what we look for these days is we look for jobs where the individual has to have some very specialized environmental knowledge, skills, or training. So they understand what it is to be an architect or an engineer or a scientist, but they've gone a little bit beyond that, beyond the basic understanding of their field, and they've developed a knowledge base or a skill base that's focused on the environment. So we know that there are biologists who are out there right now helping to try to find a cure for COVID-19. Okay. We also know that there are biologists out there right now trying to help preserve frogs in the rainforest. The ones that are trying to help solve the problem of COVID-19 would not be considered to be environmental workers from our perspective. The ones that are trying to preserve and protect frogs in the rainforest would be considered. And their knowledge and their skills around that are what define that particular occupation as being an environmental occupation.
Mm. And I think which was an interesting point that someone I think from the Yukon brought up was that just because maybe your career isn't designed or defined as environmental, but you can still leave a sustainable life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, when we talk about individuals who are working for organizations that are contributing to environmental protection or environmental conservation, you can be an accountant, not know anything about science, not know anything about preserving wildlife or about cleaning up the water or about climate change, but you're supporting those who do. So there are opportunities for individuals to get involved by finding organizations that match their particular personal interests and goals. So maybe you don't go and work for a company that is interested in uh, uh, mining, for example. Maybe you go and work for a company that's interested in green construction or in developing new technology for food waste recycling. Those are the sorts of options that people have available to them.
Oh, so great. So Rosa, now would be a great time. I know that there's so much content to get through and we could talk for hours, but I'd love to be able to open up to questions. So if you have
Sure.
a question, please on the participants area, raise your hand. Or give me a wave. If I can see you in the background, I'll call on you. But Rosa, who's joining us from the live stream, asked, she wanted to know what inspired you with a PhD in economics. What inspired you to go into this sort of more sustainable field?
Well, from my perspective, it was a happy accident. I spent a lot of time after I graduated with my PhD teaching a variety of different types of economics. So I did teach environmental economics. That was one of my fields. I also taught energy economics, regulatory economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, statistics. Um, and I spent quite a few years doing that. When I decided that I was getting to the point where it would be better to let new people come in and start teaching those opportunities. I wanted to move on in my career. I ended up learning about this labor market information that I'm now researching. And I actually started doing it in the petroleum industry. I started doing it for the Petroleum Labor Market Information Group. I did that back in 2013, 2014. And I did that for about a year, mostly because it was a transition. It was a contract job. Then I moved to an organization that is more focused on estimating the losses that a person might have incurred because they were injured in an accident or in some sort of adverse event. So I was looking at what we call forensic economics at that point. Um, Again, I was contacted by a friend of mine who had just joined Eco Canada, and she said, "We'd love for you to come and join us here at Eco Canada." And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to find a place where I can settle down and and really have an opportunity to develop an industry that I really support, that I really have a passion for. So it was luck for me to fall into this opportunity. I didn't seek it out, but it was there, and I am so lucky to have found it.
I think that, I mean, I will invite Campbell to speak in a few minutes as well, but I think that's really, I mean, myself as well, it's the connections you make through following your passion. So I had a large passion for teaching, and it was through the connections I made and the interests I pursued outside of that I was able to sort of bring those two together.
Yes.
So, I mean, whenever people ask me for career advice, I'm always like, follow your passion and then know where you kind of want to go. Like, in terms of, I'd like to work in this sort of area, whether it be technology or I'm really into video games. Well, start with something that you know you can, an education that you'll need to pursue, but then make the connections, reach out to those organizations. I mean, an Eco Canada, I think, would be, even no matter, I'm sure if you got an email from someone in Brazil, you would know, because I saw that you were a speaker recently at the Globe 2020 conference. And
That's
so you
right.
have networks that reach beyond just Canada for those who are joining us from Taiwan or those that are joining us from Europe, who would be, you'd be able to say, well, Eco Canada can't serve that need, but this is the organization that you might contact in your own country.
Right. Absolutely.
Do
Absolutely.
you find that the networks amongst environmental organizations are strong, sort of that serve the needs of creating these environments?
I think that they are still developing. There is a lot of work on Eco Canada's part to reach out to other countries to assist them in the development of organizations like Eco Canada. Part of our professional services team has been in the Caribbean recently, talking to a variety of different Caribbean countries about developing an environmental workforce and a sustainable support system for that workforce. We've been training people from Dubai and from India, and we've been looking for opportunities to partner with Australia. So we're developing those. We're not quite at the stage where we can say that they're tight, but they're growing.
Oh, wonderful! It's nice to hear that, that those opportunities exist. That even if you want to pursue, if you're Canadian and want to pursue environmental work, it doesn't keep you within the borders. And I think
No.
that's a great segue to our speaker who's joining us, Campbell. I'll see if I can find you. There's so many people in the room here. I'll see if I can find you on the big
There we
screen.
go. I should come up now.
Campbell, there you are. Because you yourself, your main focus isn't environmental studies, but you've been able to bring it into your passion and what you're doing on the side so well. How are you finding negotiating that? Well, actually, maybe I'll get you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Campbell. I am a university student here in Calgary. I'm studying for my bachelor's of nursing. So not really what you'd typically think of as an environmental pathway or someone who would necessarily be passionate about the environment and the outdoors. But what I've had the opportunity to do through a variety of different paths is to really take my passion for the outdoors and be able to apply it in my everyday life and also in my studies at university. And so I kind of want to start this going back a little bit to my grade 11, grade 12 years, so right near the end of high school for myself, where I had a fantastic teacher who arranged for some pretty incredible opportunities that were kind of these first stepping stones into the outdoor and the environmental world. And one of these opportunities was a project with the Center for Global Education, where I had the opportunity to work with youth from around the world on a global white paper that we wrote and then presented in Edmonton in 2018 at the IPCC Cities and Climate Change Conference. And this opportunity was really that first stepping stone for myself into this world of the environment and environmental protection and conservation. And because of this opportunity, new doors opened for myself. And one of these opportunities that came my way was through the Canadian Wildlife Federation in a project funded by the Government of Canada through their Canada Service Corps organization or department. And the Canada Service Corps is a program that was launched by the federal government to provide young Canadians the opportunity to participate in meaningful volunteer and service projects in their communities, both in Canada and around the world. And so, as part of this, they provided funding to major organization, not-for-profit groups here in Canada to provide these kind of opportunities to Canadian youth. And so, I had the opportunity to join the Canadian Wildlife Federation's a program called the Canadian Conservation Corps. And this program is broken up into three parts. The first is kind of like a personal growth section where you have the opportunity to develop skills and really learn about yourself. The second component is the opportunity for you to give back to a part of Canada that you're not necessarily from. In doing so, you partner with a conservation organization. And so for myself, that was partnering with an organization called Hope for Wildlife, which is a wildlife rehab center in Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada. And I worked with them for 3 months. And then the final component of this program is to return to your home community and to have to develop your own service project to give back to your local community. And so through this program, in my third stage, where I was giving back to my community, I partnered up with the Center for Global Education to help facilitate their Decarbonize project, which is a program for school students from around the world to come together and collaborate and share ideas on climate change and the environment. And then a group of those students came together at COP25, or the Conference of the Parties, in Spain this past November to write a white paper that they then had the opportunity to present. Kind of building off the Canada Service Corps component, I also had the opportunity to attend the conference and to spend an afternoon with those students who were writing, thanks to the United Nations Association Canada through one of their Canada Service Corps projects. And so, kind of tying all of this back into what we were discussing, even though my current path with university is not one that would typically involve the environment, I found a way to take these experiences and apply them to these studies that I'm pursuing. And so during my time at the COP25 conference, I put a big focus on attending negotiations and panel discussions that were revolving around healthcare and the impact that environment has on our health. In addition to this, I also attended panel discussions that were discussing the impact that our healthcare system has on the environment. And so the moral of all of this is that regardless of kind of the path you choose and what your interests are. If you're passionate about the environment, there's always going to be some way to tie it into what you do, and that there will always be opportunities for you to be engaged in environmental conservation and education, no matter what you do.
Oh, Campbell, thank you so much for sharing. Maybe I'm gonna start. There's so many questions. Oh my goodness, we have so much coming in from the live stream. We have so much coming in from the students who are in the room. It's awesome. But before we get started, I'm gonna hit some of those ones as well. But
Yeah.
you were saying like you were working with UN, you were working with Hope for
Hope for Wildlife.
Yes, Hope for Wildlife, CWF. How, as a nursing student, like how do you recommend, and then I'll ask maybe Jeannie can answer the same question, how do you recommend that these students find those opportunities? How did you find those opportunities? And what do you recommend to all these youth who are here today who want to do the same thing?
For sure, yeah. So for myself, the biggest piece of advice I can give for people who are looking to find opportunities like this is, especially while you're a student, you're going to be presented with smaller opportunities that may not seem like much at the time. But it's these smaller opportunities that allow you to connect with and find out about and make the connections that will allow you to really take the step towards these bigger opportunities. And so while you're in school, reach out to your teachers, reach out to community leaders. These are the types of people who are going to know about different opportunities that are out there that will coincide with your passions, whether that's environment or not. And they're going to be the ones who can help you take those first steps in discovering these opportunities. And then honestly, Google is another fantastic resource. It seems really obvious, but there's lots of people who think, oh, if I Google it, I'm just going to get a whole bunch of random stuff that's not going to interest me. And you're right, you are going to get stuff like that. But it is a fantastic resource, especially once you've kind of taken those first steps and know what you're looking for. It's a fantastic resource to continue to utilize.
Awesome. And I know too, when I was in university, a university teacher, there were so many scholarships that went unapplied for because people think, oh, they're going to get inundated with applications. There's no way that they'll choose me. But oftentimes, so many people think that, and so they go unapplied for or unawarded. And I imagine, Jeannie, can you sort of speak to the opportunities that you know exist and how students and youth can reach out to them?
Yes, absolutely. One thing that I find is most important to developing your passion and to finding a niche for yourself in the environmental world, if that's what you're interested in, is connecting with other people who are equally passionate and are doing that sort of work themselves. So one of the most important aspects of a career development that we advocate at Eco Canada is networking. Finding individuals who are in the field that you're interested in, that are working towards the goals that you're working towards, and actually reaching out. I know it can be very intimidating when you're a student and you're reaching out to adults, people in the workforce, but they're usually going to be very receptive. They want to ensure that there are more people doing what they're doing. They want to support the young and vibrant and exciting energy that comes out of university students and high school students, because they know that that passion is translated into objectives very easily. So my first recommendation would be get over your fear and actually talk to people who are out there doing what you're interested in doing. Find them on LinkedIn if that's an area, or Facebook, or other social media organizations. Find the through your career counselors at your school, but just make contact and invite them for coffee. Invite them for a quick chat online. They don't have to be in your city. They can be across the globe. But you can still reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Could we talk for a few minutes? And you could you tell me a little bit more about it? The more connections like that you make, the more likely it is that you're going to fall into something that you absolutely love.
Oh, wonderful advice. Thank you both. So our friend in Taiwan, Mei Mei, has a question. Mei Mei, would you like to unmute and you can ask? Let's see if I can find you. There's so many people. Let me unmute you, Mei Mei. There you are.
Okay, do you hear us now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay. Are there any particular personal traits should an environmental worker equip it?
Are there any personal traits required?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And we've done quite a bit of research into that. We've asked environmental employers what it is that they're looking for. And there are two types of skills that they're interested in. One are the technical skills or the knowledge skills. So they want workers who come to them with some understanding of what the work that they're going to be doing involves. So if you're going to be taking on a technical position, they want people who have those technical skills, that experience with that technology coming into the gate. But more important these days is the ability to work collaboratively. There's research that's been done globally, which indicates that over time, more and more jobs are likely to be automated. So, robots and computers, digital technology, is going to take over a lot of the more manual tasks that are being undertaken today. Where we need to develop the workforce is in the human skills. It's in negotiating with people, collaborating with people, being sure that you can organize an enterprise, teamwork, um, uh, leadership skills. Those sorts of what we call soft skills or human skills are normally not taught at university. They're normally not something that university students focus on. They focus on the technical skills. So wherever you find opportunities to learn public speaking or to learn negotiation skills or to work in teams, take those opportunities to refine those skills. Those skills are going to be very important.
Awesome. And do you have anything you'd like to add, Campbell? Or, I mean, that was an amazing answer.
That was really very comprehensive. I think the only thing I might add, especially for those of you who are still in high school and may not have these technical skills or these specialized skill sets that they're looking for, is to take advantage of programs and opportunities that may be out there to allow you to diversify your skill set. I found that especially coming out of high school, applying for different programs and opportunities, one of the main things they're looking for in our age group is diverse skill sets, not necessarily highly specialized ones.
Mm-hmm.
They really want you to be a well-rounded individual. And so looking for programs and experiences that will give you the different perspectives of different global perspectives can be really beneficial when looking for these kind of opportunities.
And I think something I can add, when we were hiring for our position here at the center, something that we really valued was people who volunteered. So who volunteered in the area that they wanted to pursue. So if you can show, like, I did this out of my own desire to become more proficient and more knowledgeable, understand the language, understand the people, understand the work better in a way that was that supplemented, and it didn't have to be a large commitment, even just a few hours a week, because I know that it can be hard to balance school and work and family and faith and all those things that come together in our lives. But even a few hours to say that I've dabbled my foot in this and I like what I'm seeing. And so for us as an employer, that was something that was we thought was a valuable thing to have in the applicants that came through our program. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as well. So we have on the live stream a lot of questions. Some of them to do with people lead a more sustainable life, and I think that does vary. We have so many people joining us from all over the world. It's so particular. What we can do in Canada to be more sustainable in our daily lives is different than perhaps in Brazil or Taiwan because of
Baby, look.
of our areas.
Chocolate chip cookies.
I'm gonna mute our friend here who's just popped in. Let's see if we can find. Oh, there's one here from George, and he's wondering, is it hard to find work in the environmental field? Like when you're looking at all the careers available in front of you as a youth, and nursing, Campbell, you went into nursing or teaching. Is Jeannie, do you feel that the environmental field has a promising future, or is it something that like what is the market for it, I guess, is the labor market right now? How is that?
That's a great question. What we find is that it is small but growing. The number of people who are, regardless of their field of expertise, being asked to develop environmental technology or to develop processes that are more efficient or less wasteful, people who are being tasked with organizing communities to come together in ways that they didn't before to deal with environmental issues in their own backyards. Those opportunities are growing. And my perspective on this is, if you want to contribute to environmental protection, environmental conservation, sustainability, mitigating climate change, there is an opportunity out there for you. You need to make yourself knowledgeable about what is required in your community, if that's where you want to work, or if you're looking internationally, what is going on in the area or the fields that you're interested in. One area where a lot of environmental employers like to have people focus their attention, at least initially when they start to work as an environmental worker, is to understand the regulations, the international regulations, the national regulations, the local regulations, how the government is contributing to preserving and protecting the environment, and to make inroads to develop that knowledge base. Because when you have an idea of the sort of context in which environmental firms are working, then it's going to be easier for you to say, I have a solution that might be practical and profitable for us to pursue. Let's take a look at this.
Wonderful. Okay. Oh, Campbell, another question has come in that we sort of asked Jeannie before, but that they're wanting, kids want to know from you. Did you think when you were younger that you would go into this sort of have these opportunities and have a green career or a green bend to your schooling and the pursuits you're doing now? What sort of got that passion fired up for you?
Absolutely. So I think I never imagined that my life would have taken the path that it did in any means. I've always had a passion and a love for the outdoors, but it wasn't until kind of that high school time that I really found that the environmental conservation was something that I was truly passionate about. It was through these opportunities that came my way. Before that, I had never really had any context or idea of what these opportunities could even look like. And since having had these opportunities, it's really given me this new perspective on what's out there, and that even though I may not necessarily envision it originally, that there are these opportunities that you may never expect to come your way. And so even though it was something that I had never really imagined when I was younger pursuing, now that it's a part of my life, I can't imagine living my life without it.
And would you say that, because you took in Calgary, there's quite a number of environmental and sustainable businesses. How did those teachers and how did the availability of that sort of in your school help?
That was probably the most instrumental part of that transition for me. Having a group of teachers who mentored me and educated me through middle school and high school really played a significant role in that for myself. Had I not had those teachers and had I not had their dedication and their passion for what they were teaching, there's a very good chance that I would never have had the opportunities that I've had, and I would never have developed the same kind of passion and dedication.
Wonderful. So, May, I see that I'm not sure if it's the same raised hand or if you have another question. I'm going to throw over to you again. Now, if anyone does have a question, you can just wave at me if you can't figure out the raise hand button that May's gotten, or you can just wave in the screen and I'll try to find you and you can ask the question live on camera instead of typing in the chat. Everything goes. All right, May, over to you. I see you waving.
Yeah, go.
How do you convince enterprises or companies to support or invest in environmental work?
That's a great question. One of the challenges that businesses face is that their main objective is to make a profit. So unless there are incentives for them to consider alternative approaches, it's difficult for them to justify making changes to a more sustainable environment. That said, what I do know is that more and more frequently around the globe, the investors who put their money into the companies are demanding that the companies become more sustainable. So part of what the investor is interested in is a monetary return, but they're also interested in making sure that that monetary return doesn't come on the back of the environment. As more and more investors demand sustainability and demand environmental protection as activities for companies to engage in, the financial sector is starting to recognize that. So banks and venture capital companies and other financial institutions that provide money to businesses in order for them to develop their business and to grow their business, more and more of them are demanding that the company not only prove that it's going to be a profitable investment, but that it's going to be a sustainable investment. And so the financial institutions are starting to put those requirements on businesses. And the more that happens, the more that companies are going to be invested themselves in taking those sorts of paths.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have lots of questions coming in from the live stream, and everyone they just want all the advice they can get out of you in 1 hour. I mean, I know that Jeannie, I had to cut a bit of what you were saying so we could get to some of these questions. Was there any sort of advice that you weren't able to get out in the short time I gave you earlier?
Well, goodness. I think that we've come up with a pretty good message for everybody who's here, in that we want you to follow what your passion is. Find what are you great at? What do you enjoy doing? Don't try to pursue a field that is something that you're not all that excited about just because you think that that's going to get you an environmental job. There will be an opportunity for you to find an environmental role if that's what you want, as a financier, as a project manager, as a lawyer, as a tradesperson, whatever it is that you're interested in. As a doctor, you can be you can study veterinary medicine to help animals, wildlife. There's so many different opportunities, but the one opportunity that seems to be growing fastest is people who are innovative and coming up with new ideas in order to find solutions to problems that we're facing. So that could be something as uh, complex as developing autonomous driving cars, electric cars. It could be something as complicated as trying to capture carbon from the atmosphere and then stick it into the ground so that we can reduce the carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions. It could be something as sophisticated as finding a way to take food waste and convert that into a plastic, which is then biodegradable itself. Those sorts of thinking outside the box opportunities are widely available, and I would encourage anybody who's got ideas to pursue them and to keep at them and develop the skills that you need in order to be able to make that a reality.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're getting down to our last few minutes here. And what I'm seeing, a lot of the questions coming in are for me, are a heartfelt, I don't know if it makes me a little sad, or a little hopeful. We'll see. But maybe you guys could each, from your perspective, one as a student and one as someone who's in the field and helping people develop, is what will this matter? So, like, what is the importance of these sorts of changes and thinking about environmental sustainable careers? Like, are we making a difference? And how can we see that? And so maybe, Campbell, if you could speak from a youth perspective, because you're still very much in the youth, and Jenny, maybe if you could start and speak to it from I mean, you've been involved in this field for many years now, and how do you feel it's making an impact? Does it matter?
Well, that's a great question. I can see that it's making an impact when I take a look at the what's the way to put this? When I take a look at the environment in Canada, one of the issues that Canadians face that may be very different from other countries is that we have a lot of space. And because we have a lot of space, we don't worry too much about the damage that we might do to a particular small area, because there are lots of other areas that we can take advantage of. At least historically, that's been the case. But the efforts of environmental work and environmental workers and environmental advocacy have made us more conscious of the global impacts of our decisions and how it's important for us to say, okay, maybe we do have a lot of space, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking care of the space that we have. We're fortunate, but we shouldn't be wasteful. And so that the environmental industry, the environmental field, has helped Canadians become more aware of what we are doing and given us opportunities to change what we're doing. So it's a slow process, because over time we find that a little bit of change goes a long way. So something as simple as we've now in Canada eliminated single-use plastics. That was plastic straws are no longer available, and so it's a simple single step, but it took a lot of environmental work to convince the government to put that legislation in place. So it's the efforts are being seen, but it does take time.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Jeannie. And Campbell, I'll throw it over to you from a youth perspective. Hello. How is this? How do you feel this matters?
Yeah. So
big woo, 2K.
Wait.
Kids would like to make noise. It's so hard to stay quiet for this whole time.
Great.
Big
So yeah, from a youth perspective, one of the things that in my university program, one of our big focuses is on Indigenous culture. And one of the teachings that was presented to us was the teaching of preserving our environment and this place that we live for 7 generations to come. And so it's kind of building off of that idea that we will see the immediate returns of what we do. We will see the preservation of natural spaces. We will see the efforts being made to preserve our environment. But our focus is not necessarily on us in this very moment. It is to commit ourselves to ensuring that we have these natural spaces and that we have natural resources in place and healthy and clean air for 7 generations to come beyond us. And so the reality is that we will see these smaller, more immediate changes. But in all likelihood, during our lifetime, it's important to recognize that we may not even see the benefits of our actions. And we, especially as a youth, when you reach old age and moving forward in our lives, we have to take that into account and say, you know what, we are preserving it not only for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. And so starting now at younger ages is really that first step in kind of developing a lifestyle around it. And so even though it may not matter to you right now, it could matter to you in 10, 15, 20 years, and it could matter for your children or your children's children or their children. And so just taking that and developing it into a lifestyle even, and taking that into account in your everyday actions is kind of that process that we need to recognize moving forward.
Wonderful. I think that's such an inspirational way to end our time together today. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Campbell, for joining us. Thank you to all of Canada, New York City, Brazil, Taiwan. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I know there was a question here on whether both of you are Canadian-based, but if there's opportunity to, if they should welcome you to reach out to us here at the Center for Global Education if you have additional questions, to reach out to Eco Canada. Jeannie was saying that they were happy to redirect you to people in your own communities who would be able to provide the support that you're looking for, or the links to those that can help you out as you pursue and your interests and your desires and your future careers. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's been wonderful to see you, wonderful to connect. I hope you'll join us again soon for our next connection. We'll be connecting tomorrow about gardening and later next week about Indigenous treaties. We'd love to have you back. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day or morning or evening, wherever you are in the world.
Bye. Bye.
The hairline is messed up.
Thank you.